survey of the area and cost associated with their engineering department. So we're right in line with that 227,000 with the bids that we received. With that, I'll take any questions that we have on that. Looking for a motion today to approve one of the contractors that submitted bids that you do have a copy of as well. So.
I have a question, Adam.
Yep.
On the schematic, when it shows the curb cut out to cross 30th there, would there be any like striping or anything like that of the actual 30th roadway that would or could happen?
So that is part of our crosswalk policy right now. They are
Okay.
going through those areas. As you may have noticed right out here, we've added some crosswalks and signage here.
Okay.
So that is part of the overall plan, is to update the city on those. This one here probably wouldn't be on the forefront of that yet, because the opposite side of 30th Street wouldn't have an apron yet. So we're
okay.
providing the apron onto 30th, but directly across from that is a driveway, mailbox, and a small area that we would have to access that first. So until that's done, we wouldn't put that crosswalk in there, to be honest.
Okay. Would it make sense to extend the sidewalk on the north side, like on the city property a little bit, until you could come over into a better area without the driveway and the mailbox and
Yeah,
everything?
they are extending it to the east,
Okay.
approximately, I'm gonna take a guess here, like 25 feet or something like that, so they're not directly across from
Okay,
the driveway,
okay.
yeah. Yep.
Other questions?
I think you can see in the bottom left corner of that diagram where they do have that laid out, where it is kind of set back from, those two dash lines are the driveway and the mailbox. You can see that they've identified that as well. So it is bringing that to the further east to
Okay.
to be on the right side of that.
So does this include painting the stripes? Parking stripes?
Normally that is included and it is striped now, so I would assume that would be striping as well.
Yeah. And this is concrete, replacing it with concrete, right?
So the current parking lot is asphalt, so we are replacing that with asphalt. There will be new concrete curb throughout that edges the outside of the parking area.
Okay. And how high is the curb?
So this will be high back curb on the radius, and then just drive over curb, little bit higher than drive over curb on the remainder of it.
And the point is for all the drainage to go to that French drain or whatever that is?
Yeah, so you will see the line in the middle of that diagram.
Right.
I think it says 64 feet. There's gonna be, that's almost the divider of which way the water's gonna go.
Oh, okay.
So it's gonna go left and right there as well. So you will get a lot of this water that goes down to the catch basin at 30th Street, as well as everything on the left is gonna go to a drainage. There is a stormwater pond right be directly west of that parking lot as well, which it currently does now. So no changes in our stormwater.
Do you have a time frame once it's approved, Adam?
So city council will review this at their next meeting, so that'd be into the June. So we weren't looking till late fall on this project to begin with, so August. That way it correlates with our summer baseball and fall baseball. Fall baseball will start after school starts, so we got that window in there of August, September, which is doable with this project. It will overlap a little bit, but we've already notified the people that have reserved the park for that time.
Okay.
Just a heads up with it.
Other questions?
I do have one more question. So one thing that I noticed at this park is people, when it's full, people park along the like entrance. And I know we've had this discussion about other parks and driveways and things like that. But if 24 feet is not enough for, depending on your requirements for, like if that fully needs to be open for access, I would just recommend some,
No
maybe like one sign or something. I know signs are not super attractive either, but a high back curb will also prevent people from driving over that and
Sitting
parking
on the
too,
curb,
so.
Something like this reviewed by the police and fire for access, or they just assume it was good before?
This is not, no.
Okay.
Yeah, this just takes into account, our engineering specs of, that we have on file for mostly, our roads and parking lots and things like that. So all those are taken into place, but a lot of times it's not reviewed by our fire marshal.
This one's just a little bit different because it's one way in and, a lot of our parking lots have in and outs and,
Right.
okay. Other questions? Hearing none, can I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to recommend to city council to approve the bid from Miller Excavating to reconstruct the parking lot and trail at Reid Park not to exceed $27,120.
Any second?
I'll second.
All right. Any more questions now that we have a motion? I think it sounds good. I think it needs to be done. I don't remember, you said it was full tonight, but I've seen it fairly full. But I think it needs to be
Yeah,
done.
I mean, in the summer, it is quite full, at least
Not
1
with
or
the
2 days a
cross-country
week.
skiing?
I will say, I also see people, or I have seen people using that basketball court. But I think that, looking at the analysis that was done, we do have 2 other full basketball courts. And, if the asphalt is nicer, people can just use that to pass too, so.
The synopsis with that is that, I think people preferred a full court.
Yeah.
Full court as well. And we thought too, with that open area, possible location for a smaller pavilion, if we were to look at that park for a pavilion in the future.
Pavilion.
So probably wouldn't fit one of our large ones in that area, just because we do have that drainage on the south side of that parking lot. But if we were to go with a smaller one, that would be an ideal spot. You still have shade, you'd still see the ball game. Accessibility for ADA compliance would be great right there. That's where our ADA parking is. So that was our kind of intent
Good,
in that.
good.
That does come down in the next 5 years as one of our potential spots. That's likely. where we do that.
Yeah, and I think that would be, that park in general, not specifically, would be a good place to put one of the shelters.
Yeah, because the only other spot would be out near the playground set, and then you're kind
Yeah.
of affecting that open space again. with the
All right, anybody else want to express opinion or say anything more about the motion?
Really appreciate the continuation of the sidewalk down to 30th. Kind of ends in no man's land right now, so that'll be nice.
All right. All in favor of the motion to recommend to the city council to approve the bid from Miller Excavating to reconstruct the parking lot and trail at Reid Park not to exceed $227,120.00, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any negatives? No. All right. Moving on to park service level staffing.
Okay, city staff is following up with recommendations made by Bolton and Mink after the completion of our Parks Master Plan last fall. The Parks Master Plan again was completed in 2024, and the first priority of that plan was to add a Parks Director position as part of city staff. As part of a 2025 work plan, the Parks Commission added it to the item to be reviewed and implemented in 2025 as well. This work plan was presented and reviewed by City Council at a joint City Council workshop, and the work plan was approved in February 2025. the issue before the Parks Commission tonight, what park level related services need more attention? Or what is being missed that should be relayed to city council for consideration in improving our park system? So currently the, Public Works is going through an evaluation of our staff levels. And that was one thing, if anybody listened to the last workshop, was what they discussed is this position, right? And so, and the question came up is like, what aren't we providing that the Parks Commission or our Parks Master Plan is asking that we do provide? So, as staff, we were looking, for your comments back, if we could put together, a short list that we could review at another meeting as well. So if everybody could put together 8 to 10 things possibly, we bring all those things back, we review them in order and put together those solid 8 things that we could bring to that joint workshop to discuss with city council for movement towards getting that position. So I think right now with our consulting firm that's doing their evaluation, it's just kind of, they read it saying, Parks Master Plan says it's there, but it just sits out there in lingo, because again, as we discussed, like, who are they supervising, what assets do we have that we're not meeting? If you review that, they are saying like, we're meeting our expectations of what you want. If you want more, then you might have to have that next level of participation or service level for staff as well. So that's what we're looking for from our commissioners, to bring those items up, bring those forward so we can review those with city council to see if our ideas match, or if there's programming that we need to provide in the community that you'd like to see, that they'd like to see as well, and how we can service those.
All right, so let me get the plan here. So tonight, we're just gonna have a general, open discussion with our ideas, but our homework is to go back and come up with, each of us come up with a more organized list, and then let's say next month, we would revisit this to come up with an integrated, combined list to present to city council. That's the plan?
Yeah, so I would suggest that we put those, like, you'd email me those, 8 to 10 items in a row. I would make the list of those at our next meeting. We would collaborate again, we review those, maybe have a longer discussion of those, pick amongst that list. I'd give each member or commissioner some ample amount of time to discuss their opinions on what's on that list. And then we'd probably bring that back in the September, probably make a meeting in September with the joint commission. Joint
Okay.
with council.
You going to email Peter, or should I?
Either way.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, no, I can, yep.
All right, so some general, let's open it up for at least a few minutes, because I have a list. And I don't know what everybody else has got. You've got a list. We're gonna throw some of these at you. So this is very preliminary.
Can I start real quick? I just want to say, I feel like all of my recommendations, really, I think that city staff here, like you and Marty, are doing a great job working with what we have. And so
Yeah.
I just want that to
Right.
kind of be the
That is
preface
a
here.
good thing. I don't anticipate that there will be a reason that the people who are currently doing the work are not able to provide service to us. So you got to get over that threshold first.
Yeah.
We're looking, a lot of this is above what we're doing right now.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So I am very glad that you remembered to bring that up, because I had one time thought about that, but because of that, you can have the first shot.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
No, go ahead, you're right there.
Well, so I don't have fully organized bullet points, but I do have some notes here. So one thing that really stands out to me when I read that master plan, and when I think about how our city compares to other cities around us, is I think we have really great parks and amenities, but we're kind of lacking that recreational programming that a number of other comparable cities have. And I think that was spelled out in the master plan. I think there's a lot of great models for that. You know, I think that the Sally Manzera Nature Center fills one specific niche, but there are a lot more that could be, you know, what do they say in the master plan? Get the ball rolling on programming to help activate Lake Elmo parks. So that's kind of the highest priority thing that I see.
I agree with that. I think there's lots of programming that could be done that's not in competition with the school district or the VAA, something like that. I think there's programming at, you know, for kids, for teens. One city website I looked at, there was of comparable size, had like a teen laser night, because we have so little for teens. And then different leagues. This past weekend, my 16-year-old grandson was in a pickleball tournament put on by the city of Cottage Grove. And they had some for kids, then they had one with kids against, a team would have someone over 35 and someone younger than 18 or something like that, you know, all sorts of different mixes, which sounds really neat to get people involved. And not just pickleball, they have all sorts of different leagues. And then, of course, there's things for adults that the VA, or I'm sorry, the school district community ed doesn't provide, that we could do. Some have programming like music in the park, maybe once a month. You know, another way to utilize the parks we have. Years ago, there used to be a puppet wagon that would come around to neighborhoods. And I think the puppet wagon was funded maybe by the J.C.'s, and the teenagers who operated might have been, had a stipend from the city. I don't remember how that worked. But other cities have programs, not where they go to a neighborhood, but they go to a neighborhood park once a week, or maybe once a month with some activities. And they might also do games or, you know, something like that, where people don't have to necessarily sign up, but just show up. Let's see. Also looking at improving the website. I know you guys are so busy, and maybe it doesn't necessarily go to, I'm not sure who would be in charge of the website, or directing someone to improve the website for the parks, you know, to showing all the different things we have. Also having, and we've mentioned this before, having a spot for donations for trees, benches, different equipment, picnic tables, shelters. A couple cities had where you could buy a paver, an engraved paver to someone while they're doing some work to help fund it for improvements in the park.
Just, that also was on my list, just to give some extra weight to that, to publicize and promote the opportunities for that. And then also, I think that there is a great value in having some visibility of thanking people as well.
Yeah, and then something that I wasn't aware of till today is something to have a grant writer to help us get more things in our parks. Which I was, you know, never occurred to me, but that would be something that would be really helpful to.
Yeah, if you look in the
improvements.
report, it
Yeah.
gives you suggestions of
Like there's a
grants.
whole bunch of,
Yeah.
opportunities, yeah.
What else, Pat?
I think that's all.
Yeah, I could echo some similar things. I had explore and secure additional funding sources, mechanism, and partners. So to me, that's a big one. Like, how do we, as the community continues to grow, we've got to find other sources of funding to support it. And then I also had long-term strategic planning regarding resource needs to support that growth, usage of parks and trails, and some of that I think also includes, and I don't even know what we do it right now in the city, but coordination of volunteers and partnerships, like how do we support all of this with other resources? And I came from Plymouth, and there's a whole, volunteer coordination group. So even if you live in the city and you want to volunteer for some of these things, like there's this, whatever it is going on as programming, you can volunteer to help. And so there's a big thing, somebody's got to organize that, and that is included in the park director or whoever is underneath that park director. So long-term, there might be other positions under that director, but somebody's got to figure that out. Like, somebody's got to start with that strategic planning around resources. Then I also had the same thing about community recreational education programming. I think, of course, I'm a big trail user, and so the whole piece around just year-round trail accessibility, to me, that's just sort of out there, nothing's really happening around that. But if we got additional sources of funding, maybe that could be something we could do. And then another piece is, of course, the interconnectivity of the trails, which I know is on our plan. I know there's different areas identified, but how's even more resource spent on that to try to figure that out? And then the other thing I had on the list is just with this new sports complex, just that opens up a whole lot more opportunities down the road. So I think, again, back to your point, Ellen, it's not like the staff isn't already doing their job, but it's just like, it's just going to grow, and how do we grow to support that from a resource need?
Keeping up with us? Because they're coming fast.
Yeah.
I can email those too.
Well, we'll email. Thank you, Timmy. To start off and dovetail in with the trails, part of the overall thing here that I've noticed is that, and this is not a knock on any of us to continue on, is it's the things that go on relative to this, the parks are somewhat helter-skelter or hodgepodge, like the trails. There's some of these issues that need focus and concentration to get them coordinated, to figure out where things, so prioritization. I think something that would need to be done is saving money, okay? I can tell you, since we don't have anybody looking specifically at it, we can probably save some money, okay, around, all right? And we have some areas that I think that were even mentioned in the report. Yeah, maybe we should combine the parks or get rid of the parks or something. And that's hard for this structure. You need somebody focused on that to be able to make those kind of recommendations. So the hard issues, I think some of those will come out of the new rec area, the baseball field. There'll be a lot of hard issues that come out of that. Policy, we're going to talk about here in a minute. Again, if we had somebody more active on this, could focus on policy changes, more real-time policy changes, make those changes, keep them up to speed, goes along with advocacy. So cost savings, advocacy, coordination, potentially saving money, dovetailing on the earlier ones, communications. We've already had our former young person say we are in the sub-dark ages about communicating with stuff, okay? And I agree with all the rest of the ideas, and it will make it, but you can look, it talks about in their comparison and benchmarking to cities around, and they'll have staff 4, 5, 6,
13 on average.
13 on average. We've got 0.
2.
They say 2?
They say
Okay,
2.
all right, 2.
13.7 is the average or the median for
But if you look
towns.
at one, the city of Little Canada, which is only slightly bigger than Lake Elmo, they have 4 people, okay? And now, a lot of them are doing the things that we were suggesting and talking about programs and activities and communications and things like that. But I think you can kind of see that we are definitely in the area of staffing somewhat out of the norm when it comes to parks. So again, more ideas. Adam said he could use infinite ideas. So please email,
Yeah.
and I'll send something to Peter. I'll send something to Peter.
Just to add on some more things, some other things that I
Good.
found, well, yeah, considering this prompt, which I thought was really thoughtful, I think that it's easy to say we need, or like, more would be great, but like, for what? What's the vision here? And I think that, so, yeah, I guess a couple questions. I don't know the inner workings of the city of Lake Elmo, but I think, so in the master plan recommendations, it was also recommended to think about a forester. And with a lot of development, right? Like, I know that there are tree ordinances and, all of that work needs to be done too. And so I don't know if things could be shuffled around in a way that would free up some space on someone else's work plan so that they could do something that is more of their interest, something that they're better at, where an emerging need is, to take some stuff off. I was also thinking, and they recommended, considering a part-time forester. I know the city of Lake Elmo had one previously, and so I don't know what duties got piled onto someone else, or what ended up not being a priority, and if that's still true, that's great. Maybe some things could get brought back. So,
Quick question here. Forester is same as an arborist?
yeah, seems like there's a lot of variability there, so I don't know what Lake Elmo had prior.
I think they had a part-time arborist that helped out. So
Okay.
They would reach out, or there were so many hours that that person.
She
had.
did-
Oak Park
did
Heights
visits.
has, but they're, a tree city, and somehow, if you're a tree city, you have to have an arborist, or there's some connection there. But I don't know. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, so I think that, well, I will say, just to kind of continue this, the city of River Falls, I happen to know quite well because I grew up there. But this past winter, they actually advertised for a conservation and parks manager, is what they called it. And that position also was to serve as the city forester. They were, I think that maybe that would be worth taking a look at because it hit kind of all of the points in the master plan. Something else too that I was just thinking about, capacity and, yeah, I guess questions for you to think on, Adam, like with your colleagues, if it would be useful to have someone do some more of that natural resources GIS type of stuff. Like, could that come off someone's plate? If there's programming, well, we know there will be programming for the new community park. So maybe there is a lot of kind of startup energy that needs to be put into there. And then maybe it can kind of, flux in other ways. So I think thinking about some flexibility to also address other emerging needs for city staff is kind of top of my mind. And I don't have great insights into that about what might be your pinch points here. Or where folks are super stressed or overworked.
So you see how the discussion about, like a parks superintendent or parks manager or whatever, delves into the question, as was brought up earlier, who works for that person, okay? And so there could be a forester, there could be a administrator of programs, and those types of things. So you gotta kind of have that collective discussion. And that's why it's good that you brought up the forester part of it.
I think it would be great to have a connection with the tree trust program, because you can get trees for this, not only for the city parks, but also help homeowners add more trees. And they work with a large group of cities across the metro area to reforest. This would probably be an initial foresting here, but to bring in more trees.
Which got back to the presentation by the woman a few weeks ago about the flight paths, the paths through the city of the animals and things like that. That's tied to trees and tied to vegetation. And is there, might we keep some of these parks, maybe not as a park, but as a place where we could keep the vegetation that keeps the animals having places to go? So yeah, there's a lot to do there.
It's exciting to think of all the possibilities.
And that is in part what you get with a city like Lake Elmo that's growing.
Yeah.
And guess what? There are gonna be more people.
Yeah.
Right?
Since this is an agenda item, Adam, could we ask for your thoughts too? Like, is the city planning to grow in other departments, I guess? And, I mean, would it be feasible to think about some reshuffling? Like, is that on the table, or is that not really on the table? Like, it would need to be a dedicated position to do, like, extra things in order for the city council to talk about it.
No, I think we're on the right track here. The only problem is, as we just talked about, as we grow, what else grows? Water
Right.
and sewer mains.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't think you're ever gonna take that away from somebody.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think your question was, are we taking this away?
So we're not putting you
There-
out of work.
Yeah, there's more work coming for that person
Okay,
as well,
perfect.
with the additions to all that, right? So, yeah, more lift stations, it's more roads to plow, it's more, managing all that, so,
But it kind of
we're-
falls along the lines, is we're giving you kind of a fraction of the answer, because we don't know the overall budget, we don't know where we know what it is for parks, but we don't know the overall situation. We're just throwing
Yeah.
out.
And we don't know
ideas.
what things, are on your work plan that you just kind of never get to, that are not related to anything parks or anyone else, right?
Yeah.
Anything.
And so I'll be honest, as our work plan is set up and, laid out for what we can handle, right? To be
It's pretty
100%
good.
honest, cause
Yeah.
if
Well,
I
that
put,
makes
if I
it
put
realistic.
25 things on there I'm not gonna accomplish, then you're gonna be asking why, it's on the
Right.
work plan, why aren't we going after it,
Right.
right? So yeah, that's 100% on that, but this person could also work with our CIP and keeping that up to date.
Oh, yeah.
From, for the
And
next
really
10
looking
years.
at priorities too, okay? As you go through the year, that things change and things pop up, and maybe you want to shift that, and somebody who can do that, not to say that you don't do it, but again, somebody who's really focused on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I was just gonna add, I mean, it's right to start with the work, because then starting with the work defines what that position is and even what that level is. Because as a director, or do you start with a manager, or what's the level that you start with?
Or a coordinator.
Well, right, exactly, like, so if you start with the work, then it's like, what's the right position for that work? And the level and pay and all that good stuff that comes with it.
And again, with our parks, we have contracted services, right? So, I think Pat and I had talked about that in the past as far as, is that service level being met? Or is that something we have to take back in? If it's, if it's our mowing side, or if it's the Sally Manzaro Center, or if it's, as far as volunteers, or whatever that might be. We need to address that to say, are those services being met by those contractors, or is that something that we need to hone back in? And tone up our, just our bid to them, or that the bid that they're providing, and we have to increase that, or what that might be.
Yeah, and I would say in my comparison, and I'm always looking at parks, that our parks in general are well-kept, all right? But they're not greatly, they're not over the top. And a lot of parks I visit there's more amenities, and there's more, you can tell, more upkeep, all right? So we're doing fine, but just as far as the parks themselves, I think we could do better. Okay, anything else? Again, email to Adam. And then the plan was around September, you would put all those together.
We'd come back, I'd bring it back to a regular Parks Commission meeting as an agenda item. We'd
Okay.
review that list of,
Okay, good.
of 20, whatever it might be, and we'd really prioritize those down to 8 to 10 possibly, that we'd bring back to that joint meeting.
And I think it is very good, right, wrong, or different, or whatever decided is that we're discussing this, because, again, if we're gonna get the value out of this report, we need to do what it says. We need to consider doing what it says, and then the reality set in. All right. Park reservations under communications.
Yeah, so just wanted to follow up with our park reservations. I had a number of community residents reach out in regards to our park reservations and the like, since we last met in the last month. And I have asked that some of those reach out to the commissioners as well, just to express their input on that, because a lot of times what they might tell me might be different than what they tell you, or they might give you more insight of if they're at a park every day versus, where we might only see those once a week or something like that. So, just wanted to go back and review those park reservations, what we discussed, and let you know, just because our CIP was moved up that month, that's kind of why I shuffled this down. We'll bring this back likely next month, to review actually what will be written in there, for suggestions, approval to city council, a change of that policy. So just a review of that again, that parks reservation is to really look at reservations of residents versus non-residents, specifically with our shelters, just splitting that up half day versus full day. Again, with that funds of likely receiving those funds all, keeping all those funds versus being returned, mainly because we're still going back there to clean up the garbage after each time, right? So that doesn't change right now. We're giving that money back right now, but we're still doing that service, right? So with these, we do look at, are we increasing our level of service when we're increasing the demand or the money funds that they're giving us, right? So we need to keep those in mind as we go through those as well. So that's one item there that I thought, well, that's a straightforward, right? We're giving the money back, however, we're doing the same level of service, but we should be increasing that or keeping those funds for future shelters, but also just maintaining them in the long run, right? Lighting, we talked about raising the price of lighting. Currently, we charge $150 for that when they reserve. A lot of times those people are reserving for the whole season. So we'd be looking at that reservation being at a monthly basis. A lot of times in that June, July, you're likely not using those lights, but you're also getting the best advantage out of those early spring, late fall when they're using them a lot more. I did include the prices that we accrued over the last year in regards to our lighting. A lot of that coming from our large fluorescent lights at our pickleball and baseball fields in town. So just to recoup maybe some of that funds, maybe not here to make a whole lot of money on it, but recoup some of those funds and keep the update of those. Because those are expensive lights, the bulbs themselves, especially when you gotta call the electrician out when the squirrel gets in and starts eating the wire too, doesn't get cheap, so. Going back to court use, we talked about reservations of a percentage versus a percentage of the courts versus all of them. So leaving some of those courts open for reservations for normal walk-ins of public, if that'd be 50% is what I had initially written down. But also for those long-term residentials, if it be residents or non-residents, if they reserve for a longer period of time, there'd be fees applied to that are non-refundable because of that. So that's what I had written down, but if you recall of anything else, I'll make note of those as well, so.
Questions, comments?
I have one quick question. How are, in practice, so I know making a reservation, right, you call. Is there like software that's being used to manage that right now, or is it just like
So there's a
quite
form that's filled
manual?
out right now.
Okay.
Our deputy clerk, now our current clerk goes through
Yep.
those, goes based off that reservation policy, how we have that listed out.
Okay.
Are they a resident, are they a club within the community, and that's how they prioritize. Right now, they're currently put on the website
Yep.
calendar, but now we're changing over to that new website, that's gonna be a whole different,
Right.
different venue. So there's not a program that you're implementing those online and submitting them. It's still all paper draft right now, so.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess I mean, I assume all of you got the same email, but, you know, I think having something that would allow for, you know, like each day to be reserved rather than I want this for the full summer, you know, except for these days or something like that, could just make sure that a reservation, when a reservation is out, someone has reserved something, it's being used, right? Instead of saying like, I want this field from 6 to 8 through the summer, like that, you know, just if we can get more specific so that people don't get shut out, I think that would be helpful.
Other comments?
Yeah, I had several comments, playing at Tablin several times in the past month. The portable toilets are really clean. They really like how that's done well, and often. Questions about whether there was a recycle bin, because there's 2 waste baskets up at the top. One is green and one is blue. They're a distance from each other, but neither one is labeled recycling or not.
Okay.
And a number of people asked me about that, and I had no idea. I wasn't sure if there was a difference. A number of people saw, there were 2 papers posted showing reservations. I don't remember exactly how long they were, but it was for the whole summer, for many days, for several hours. And I heard a number of people, there was a lesson going on, so there was an instructor and eight students, adults, and they all were complaining about this, what, we can't come here then? And it appeared that all the courts were being used. So there was a lot of discussion. I was almost afraid to go over and walk over to them. But, you know, listen to them and them talk about that. On the other hand, I have a friend who used to play in another city, and they came over here because it was a much better deal. They get their money back. And they're one of the groups reserving for 3 days during the week for a number of hours each day. So I've heard both sides. Some people really like it. Others who are shut out are not so happy about it. And then I know that there are signs posted that if it hasn't been reserved, that you wait and you cycle in and out. Your group plays a game, and then if someone is waiting, another foursome will come in and play. And there are some things that you can use to make the waiting equitable. You know, there's certain pickleball rackets. You can put your paddles in there, and so that if your group is done, you put your paddles in there, and it really controls who's going, and it avoids any issues with people jumping ahead of others. And it would be really nice to have some of those at each of the pickleball courts. Most of them have them. Stillwater just got them this year. A lot of them in White Bear Lake and around the area have them, and it would be really nice to have something like that, a setup for the waiting people.
One thing, I don't know if we brought up, but was, do we want to add any additional parks to the reservation? Prior, it was, you know, we have our Tablin, Pebble, you know, our baseball field. But, you know, Stonegate is not a reservable. But if it includes a pavilion, should we make it reservable? You know, or all pavilions reservable? Like I said, right now, we have certain parks that are reservable. And not, so Ivywood is not a reservable park, so that does have a pavilion. So it's just a question I toss out as consideration, is like, do we make all parks reservable or just ones with certain amenities? If it's a pavilion or a ball field or a court, but you are, you know, you're adding to that list of reservable things. Ivywood works out great now. We have very few complaints about it as far as people playing, people reserving. I mean, we don't have nothing going on there, so.
Yeah, something must be different with Ivywood because they must manage it themselves versus Pebble or something, because I see it, it's packed, everybody seems to be working through it, and we don't have complaints from residents, the nearby residents, about the courts all being packed. So,
I think a lot of people go to Tablin. I've been at Ivywood twice, and it was so windy, we left and went to play at Tablin. 'Cause it's out in the open so much.
comments? You know, just to back to the one email that we got, first of all, there are a lot of things within our park system, like the baseball fields, if I have my family all over, and there's 14 of them on Saturday morning, and I want to play baseball at Lions Park, I can't, okay? So there are things that are utilized, we don't have enough double resources for everything. So that's one side of the question about having all of our pickleball courts reserved or not, okay? Well, the one answer is go to another park, all right? I realize this is the one that's right next door to you, but, you know, maybe the answer is go to another park to see how they are. But at the same time, I think that there's the ability, and you got struck, part of that question is, you know, so if we're gonna say half of them are not reservable, I don't know what that does to the parks like Ivywood, where it's all figured out. Now we're gonna come in and say, you gotta keep part of them open. So that's a tough question there. But I think it's good to look at it, and I like keeping some aspect of it, even though it makes it more difficult, of it open for the public. But there are times of days too, because they're not out there all the time. All right, but if we had a parks director, they would be on top of this to build a more coherent policy structure.
I think it would be nice to have more parks and pavilions rentable, reservable, because if you have a family thing you want to do, and you'll know that if you show up, there's not a neighborhood group going on that you're interrupting, you know? I'm talking like a one-time thing, not every week for the whole summer.
Oh, yeah, I lived in Oak Park Heights for years, and they have a couple of pavilions that every Saturday morning through the summer, there's a family reunion, there's a church thing, there's something booked almost every Saturday through the summer. So, but that's a little bigger, and it has a few more amenities than what we've got, but. All right, anything else on that policy? I think it's good that we're working on the policy. I think it was very apropos, and you keep working on it, put it together, and I think it's good. And do not mind hearing from the public. I think you suggested to come in and talk about it, so all of that is good. I'm not sure a lot of people, they might see it written on the fences, but I don't think they've gone to the website and really looked at the policy. So I would encourage people to go out and look at that.
The calendar isn't up in operation on the website, is it?
I don't think so, not right now,
Yeah.
because of the transition.
Yeah.
All right, anything else on the park reservation system? Anything else on the park review? Any updates?
Yes, I'd like to go back to, in the past, we've been going to our parks, reviewing them, bringing back information. So I'd like to, if we could, before our next one, review Tana Ridge Park, just north here, or northeast. Bring that one back for suggestions and some considerations, just a quick walkthrough again, just looking for commissioners' input, some things there. Tana Ridge, a few things coming up, not in the next couple of years, but we are looking probably 3 or 4 years out before anything with that one, so.
Good one to look at, yeah. Anything else?
Nothing further.
The parking lot at Sunfish, or I'm sorry, at Pebble looks nice. The changes, the additional spots.
Yes.
And the concrete barriers at the end. I see it's in works at Sunfish. There was something else that was new I saw.
The playground.
The playground, yeah, but I thought there was something before that. Yeah, the playground at Clyce is partially done. And the structure, the climbing structure that we voted on for the teenagers looks pretty cool.
Okay. The, again, I would encourage, even as part of this, going out and look at parks, go out and look at parks, because people are using them. I was out at the dog park, and I had been out there last fall, and there was hardly anybody, but this went about 2 weeks ago, and it was jumping with dogs, lots of dogs. So that's going well.
Oh, one more thing, with the cleanup of Sunfish Park, there's a lot of wildflowers popping out. You know, with the trees gone and the sunlight reaching in, it's really pretty.
Friday, 9 AM, I'm walking it, so. All right, what else? Well, I hope they've made a copy of our meeting. That would be good. Anything else before we adjourn? Get a motion to adjourn?
Motion, we adjourn the meeting?
Second?
I'll second.
This meeting is adjourned.